I look at California. I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss. That you lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee. If Jesus came down.
Donald Trump doesn't know a lot, but he does know that when he opens his mouth, bad things happen. It's why right-wing outlets like Fox and Newsmax and OAN are cutting off Donald Trump's speeches early because they know the more their listeners hear him and see him unravel and really lose his mind, the more off-put they will be by Donald Trump. And that's why, when he calls into Fox, they're trying to get him off the air as early as possible now, because they know how hurtful his own words are to his campaign. And it's why we see Donald Trump doing more of these non-traditional interviews, why he won't sit down with an actual journalist, because any pushback at all, anything that's not a softball question, he'll really just instantly lose his mind and implode. Because, as we've talked about so much on the show, he is unraveling. He is losing it more so than we've ever seen. And it's especially because he doesn't know how to define KLA Harris, and it drives him absolutely crazy. That's why he's so caught up in grievance and in the past, and that's exactly what we saw from Donald Trump in this really strange interview with Dr. Phil. So strange that Dr. Phil is someone who I think is a supporter of Trump. He's been doing more interviews with him lately, was kind of stunned, was kind of put off. You could see how creeped out he was during the entire interview by just the nonsense coming out of Donald Trump's mouth, and I want to get into this first clip. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video and hit that subscribe button, it really goes a long way in supporting this show. Now, let's get into this first clip.
I look at California. I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss. That you lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee. If Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California, okay? In other words, if we had an honest vote counter, a really honest vote counter, I do great with the Hispanics, great. I mean, at a level that no Republican's ever done. But if we had an honest vote counter, I would win California.
Denial from Donald Trump has hit a new high. What does it even mean if Jesus was the one counting the votes in California? Then he'd make up a multi-million vote margin in one of the most consistently liberal states. Donald Trump, he is so separated from reality that his concern is always, of course, with crowd size and ratings and whatever enthusiasm metric he wants to gauge. But he thinks just because he did one rally in California once, and he supposedly had a big crowd. I'm not sure if that's even true considering the size of Donald Trump's crowds lately, but just because he had a big crowd, he thinks he wins the state, but he's just being lied to. It really doesn't make any sense. And again, it's showing the grievance that Donald Trump is caught up with. He can't unfocus himself from the 2020 election because he knows he's going to lose this one. And so he's, as always, so stuck in the past, but more so than usual, and he's really just unraveling as his campaign does. And it's led him to focus on everything but Kamala Harris because he doesn't know what to do with her, and he's driven so mad that she does not respond to him. She doesn't care about him. She is just focused on the future. And of course, it just leads Donald Trump to say more and more weird things like he did right here.
Out of all the time that we're on this planet, it's 1/8 of a second, right? So I shouldn't be with you. So
is there a purpose?
Well,
is there a reason you think you were spared?
I mean, the only thing I can think is that God loves our country and he thinks we're going to bring our country back. He wants to bring it back. It's so bad right now what's happening when you look at the crime, the horrible things that are happening inside our country, and it can be solved. It can be solved fairly quickly. It has to be God.
So at the RNC, Donald Trump said that he would never speak about the assassination attempt on his life ever again after he did then and now. All he's ever talked about is the assassination attempt. But getting past that, spared by God, really, Donald? Really, he thinks of himself as like this mythical godlike figure. It's because he has this cult. It's because he's such a narcissist. And it's weird to me that Donald Trump, again, I don't believe him. He says that he believes in God. But what's really coming out of Donald Trump's mouth, or what he's really thinking in his mind, is that he thinks he's a godlike figure. And that's why he was so spared. He doesn't think someone put him on Earth to do something more important, higher powered it. He thinks he's a higher power. It's just why he's such a narcissist and is completely caught up with himself, no matter what. And there's nothing else that he can possibly focus on again. He doesn't have any way to frame Kamala Harris. And we can tell that that is the truth in this clip right here.
First, what do you think of her as a person? What do you think of Kamala Harris as a person, just personally?
Well, I don't know her. You get to know people when you watch them on television or when you see them and read them, and but
So you don't know her personally?
she's a Marxist. Well, I can see by action. She's a person that wanted to defund the police very strongly, bailed out a lot of people in Minnesota from jails who did some really bad things. I saw that very loud and clear then when that took place. A lot of bad things. I mean, she's done a lot of bad things. There will be no fracking. There will be no drilling. She doesn't want to drill.
The brazen confidence, maybe not confidence, is ignorance of Donald Trump is so funny for him to say, oh no, I know nothing about Kamala Harris, but she's a Marxist and I know everything about her policies and this is what she's going to do. He admitted to saying, I don't know anything about her, but then decided he was going to define her with a term that I don't think he really understands. And it's clear that he doesn't understand her policy positions because he talks about them in such strange ways, saying that she's flip-flopping, or that, she doesn't actually believe in supporting the energy independence that came about under the Biden-Harris administration. Like, she hasn't been a part of this historic record, the Biden-Harris record, and he is fixated on energy policy. And I don't know why, but you can see his weird approach to it in this clip right here.
Biden was the worst president in the history of our country. She's gone down as the worst vice president. I mean, she was known 5 weeks ago. She was known as a joke. She was known as a terrible vice president. Laughed at, scoffed at. They wanted him out, but they didn't want her. They would have done anything to get anybody on the list. They had a list of 10 people. And they put her on the list, and she came in 11th. She was the last on the list, actually, in terms of professionalism, in terms of everything else. Then all of a sudden they realized that's not going to be politically acceptable. They didn't want to do it. They didn't have the guts to make that move. And they ended up with her. And then the fake news media, of course, got right behind her. And at this moment, she can do no wrong. But if you follow politics and if you see what she said, she'll destroy this country with her tax increases and everything.
Something I've noticed about Trump when he's talking about Kamala Harris is he likes to lean on the fact that at one point Kamala Harris was maybe not the most popular vice president in terms of polling, in terms of her approval rating. I don't think that actually reflects, of course, the job she was doing, her actual popularity, but I think Donald Trump leans on that. He leans on her race in the 2020 presidential primary, I think so, because he's so angry that he thought when KLA Harris became the nominee that she wouldn't be popular. I think that was his expectation. He thought, oh, she wasn't necessarily popular as a vice president. At least in his mind, she won't be a good candidate. And that has completely been the opposite. KLA Harris's approval rating has absolutely shored she's incredibly popular. There's so much enthusiasm. And again, Donald Trump's so thrown off by this campaign. All he can hold on to is the past. And so that's why I think he keeps revisiting this, not because anyone will be moved by talking about the 2020 primary, but it's just he is caught up in the past, and he wants it to be the past. Again, he wants to be running against President Biden. He wants to be in the lead, and he's not. And so he's just thrown off that he continues to revisit his grievance because it's all he can hold on to. And so it really just shows where Donald Trump's head out, not just in this campaign, but in his life, and why it's so important that we elect someone like KLA Harris, who was focused on the future and not grievance in the past. It's why when KLA Harris says we're not going back, it's so important because it's not just the division of the Trump presidency we're not going back to, but the dangerous ideas, the ideas of 40, 50, 60 years ago that Trump wants to push us back to. And so, as Kamala Harris says, and as we say on this show, we're not going back. We are supporting the movement of KLA Harrison. If you want to support the movement of this show, make sure to hit that subscribe button to leave a like on this video. And if you want to go an extra step further in supporting the show, you can become a monthly member by hitting that join button. As a college student, the support really goes a long way, and it means the world to me. And until next time, I'll see you soon.